Hello and welcome everyone. Great to meet most of you again after our first in the series of transformational webinars. In the last webinar, we talked about the transformation of marketing, and we discussed about how the consumer journey is transforming and how the fragmentation of attention is posing a challenge for marketers. Now, taking the same discussion forward, today we are going to discuss about the transformation of B2B marketing with digital. So let's start. And like always, we're going to start with our basic foundational principles. And this time we're going to talk about what is difference between B2B and B2C. While most of you would be, of course, aware about the key distinguishing factors that are entailed in B2B marketing versus B2C marketing. But it's great to revisit them again. Primary attribute of a B2B buying or B2B selling is that B2B buying is a transaction is very, very high involvement, which essentially implies that we take a lot of time. We delve into the key features and the specs, attributes of the solution, and take our time before we decide on finally buying a business product or a business solution, which is why B2B marketers need to invest in education and creating collaboration opportunities so that they can get involved with the B2B buyer more and help them in making the correct decision. The second point for B2B transaction is that there is a high value solution involved, but more than that, there is a lot at stakes. When you, for example, buy a power backup system for a factory or for an office, it's not just the high price that you're paying for that solution or that product. You are connecting that power backup solutions with vital processes in the organization. And hence, what you buy can impact other processes in the organization also, which is why it's not just high value item that you're investing into, but there is a lot at stake when you buy something for a business, which is why B2B marketers need to invest in creating trust through thought leadership communication. The third aspect of B2B buying or transaction is that it is characterized by a very diverse decision-making process. It's becoming more and more complex day by day. And the reason for its diversity is that the decision-making does not reside with one single person or one single function most of the times, but rather there are multiple stakeholders or multiple decision makers who come from varied backgrounds and functions and sometimes even locations, and they collectively decide upon buying or not buying into a certain solution. Okay. So which is why for B2B marketers, personalization is definitely key component of marketing. The fourth aspect of B2B transactions or B2B marketing is multiple points of references. A buyer looks at multiple videos, webinars, talks to various peers of his, attends various conferences, online or offline, exhibitions, conventions, events, etc. And to essentially collect information, to collect important information about helping him make a correct decision. Which is why B2B marketers should also invest in the touch point driven experiential marketing or assist the buyer in its journey to make a correct decision. So we're going to talk about these pointers in detail in the upcoming slides. But before that, just a minute about B2C marketing. We are not trying to undermine B2C marketing here. B2C marketing in some sense is much more challenging also than B2B marketing, but it has its own characteristics. B2B buyers or B2B buying is less a less involvement process than B2B buying. Mostly B2C buying is for self-usage, uh, which is why large amount of investments by marketers are executed during awareness phase and the purchase phase, which means making people aware about the products and services at the very early beginning of the journey, or influencing them at the fag end of the journey. Uh, B2C buying is also more emotional based. Uh, Not that B2B buying is not emotional based. There is recent research suggests that there are a lot of emotions involved in B2B buying as well. There are concerns about prestige. There are concerns about insecurity, right? There are concerns about opportunities to climb up the ladder uh, in the corporate. So these are all some emotions are playing in B2B as well. But in B2C, the loyalty is less, emotions are more, and hence you would see a lot of times marketers depend upon celebrities uh, and to create advertising which can sway people in the favor of the brands uh, and catch their attention, because they are not investing in the middle of the funnel to create trust, and frankly it's not needed also as much as it is needed in the B2B part of the business, which is why that is compensated by hiring celebrities and executing these kind of celebrity driven advertising. The B2C advertising or B2C marketing also has a shorter cycle, in the sense that the buying itself is not very prolonged. You don't invest a long time before you buy into something. And even if you do, the time is not really large, not really elongated. The number of people involved are not many. So in one sense, it is a shorter sales cycle. And that is why a lot of offers and a lot of promotions drive the promotions here, marketing here in the B2C sector. In one sense, this is a blessing in disguise for B2B marketers also. The sales cycles are longer in B2B, which essentially gives marketers like us, uh, longer time to interact with our prospects. Okay, so we have time on our side when we decide to market to a B2B buyer. So in that sense, it's also uh, can be visualized in a way that a small brand, right, can use this time, this elongated time, this long sales cycle, to influence buyers by putting together its intellect, its thought leadership. It can create thought leadership content. It can leverage its intellect to help the buyers make the right decisions, to assist the buyers over a period of time. In that sense, the smaller player does not have to invest as much money, let's say, as an IBM or as an SAP into advertising, right? Because B2B buyers are looking more at the differentiation in terms of who is creating thought leadership, who is helping us by creating content or opportunities to help us buy smartly, right? And easily. In that sense, it's a blessing in disguise for smaller players and for everyone to create a level playing field, right? So let's go further and look at who is our audience set. Okay, uh, many times we are satisfied by stating that our audience set is essentially our business buyers, right? But it's not just the buyers, we also are targeting our users. In B2B scenario, the buyers may be different than the users, so we need to target both of them. That's number one. Number two, we should not forget about the influencers or the opinion leaders, because these are the people who shape the opinion of the entire industry. They are the guys who are creating content so that the buyers can get educated and can then buy smartly. So, in one sense, influencers are doing our job. So, we should not forget them. When we create a marketing plan, we need to comprehend and include influencers as one of our audience sets. The third set that we must consider are our channel partners. They could be called system integrators, they could be christened as value added resellers or value added service providers, or just plain partners. They are important for us because most of the time they are the ones who install our products uh, at the buyer's premise. They are the ones who are often the first point of contact for any servicing or troubleshooting related queries. These are also the people who also had an ongoing relationship with the client. So they already have some kind of a trust build up with a B2B buyer. So again, a very important spoke in the wheel when we define our audience sets. Last but not least is our employees, right? B2B buying and B2B selling both are dependent upon a core set of knowledge base. And without that knowledge base, neither buying nor selling can be fruitful. So the companies need to invest into their employees. And when I say invest, I'm talking about creating a marketing plan, including the employees in the plan. Okay. So what can we do to train our employees better is one of the objectives for a marketing organization. Right? So we're going to talk about it again in detail in the upcoming slides, but let's go quickly into the core discussion for today, which is about the B2B marketing transformation and what are these three important changes that we are looking at today from a transformation perspective. So number one, we are seeing that there is a change in B2B buyers' expectation. What is that change? We'll look at it in just a few moments from now. Second change that we are observing is the consumerization of B2B. Okay. And the third is a clear shift in focus from touch points to the journey. Right. Let's look at all these 3 points one by one. The first point is about the changing buyer expectation. Okay. Now, what we are seeing here is that the B2B buyers are shifting from a product level operation to an experience level operation. Okay. There was a time when the B2B buyers would buy a product by taking a very close look at the technical specs, at the features of the product, key attributes, and how they can get the best of these attributes and technical specs in the best possible price, right? So buying in one sense was very simple and more product oriented, and focus was on how one can get the most in a specific budget or a price. This had a downside also, apart from the benefit that it was simple, the buying process was simplified. Downside was that all the products, all the brands were looked at with one lens. Okay, so essentially everyone was commoditized, and products which can be the cheapest and can execute what a bare minimum expectation was there, they would be rather bought instead of other products which may be expensive but had other features or other advantages which were overlooked. So that was one scenario that we were operating in as buyers. And then the buyers moved to the second stage where the focus was more on solutions. So the sellers, instead of selling products, okay, or commodities, they started building solutions by combining different products and services, or combining some hardware and software together and building up a solution for a specific need of an organization, right? So an organization may have a need for a printer, for example. In the earlier days, the seller would go and say, okay, this is the printer, and this prints so many pages at this speed, and this is the price of output, per page output. And that was the sale. In the second stage, if we take the same example, the printer essentially, the seller rather, started creating a solution. Let's say he started selling a network printer for a specific need of an organization and started selling on the plank of the total cost of ownership, right? So instead of stating that, okay, this printer prints so many pages per minute and this is the price per page, there is a total cost of ownership which is more ROI linked for an organization and very specific need linked, which is being sold to a organization. So indeed, there was a solution and there was a more holistic way of selling it by linking it to ROI. But still, it was very, very need focused and there were limited customization opportunities available, which means a seller would create 2 or 3 packages or 2 or 3 customizations and would sell it to everyone, right? Uh, there was no personalization, which is what brought us to the third level of shift, which is what we are experiencing today, is the shift towards experience. So today it's no longer just about buying a piece of solution, but buyers are looking at sellers as partners. Okay. So buyer can say that, look, my objective is to get, enhance my productivity and in the most efficient way possible through a secured printing scenario, right? So essentially, the buyer needs security, it needs efficiency, it needs to see the productivity of the employees going up, right? And which essentially means that the client has multiple needs camouflaged as one single need. That is one. Number two, the seller needs to now interact with not just the buyer, but he has to or she has to interact with maybe the information security specialist in the organization. They have to talk to the HR or admin heads also who are looking at productivity or efficiency in that sense. They might have to talk to a function head uh, in whose functional area this solution of printing is going to be implemented. So you see that there are multiple stakeholders coming in. There are multiple needs coming in here, uh, and which essentially implies that the seller has to personalize its solutions and the sales experience to suit all these stakeholders, right? And which is the shift that we are looking at right now, from a product specific buying decision to more like an experience specific decision making, where organizations are looking at sellers more as partners, right? So more personalized, speedy, and outcomes focused, right? Let's move forward and let's see that, what is then, depriving us from this experience, from creating this experience. Why are sellers not able to create this experience? What are the challenges that they face? And what are the challenges the buyers face today in not achieving that experience through sellers, right? So number one challenge is, from a buying perspective, from a buyer's perspective, is that they see a difficulty in contacting the companies, the contacting the sellers, and in getting responses from them. Okay, that's number one. Number two, there is a clear gap in the knowledgeable salespeople and companies which are knowledgeable around that solution or experience that an organization wants to invest into. And third, the buying process itself has become very complex, and that's adding to our challenges. Let's look at all these three one by one. You can see a few graphs, statistics on your screens. Clearly, the buyers see a challenge in connecting with the sellers on two levels at least. One, before a sale has happened or before a sale is closed, and second, after a sale is closed. Right? You can see that there is no response when there are purchase related questions. And you can also see that on the other hand, after the sales has happened, there is again no response where Post-sale questions are there regarding support or services or account, etc. So more than half of the buyers are facing this challenge, that we are not able to connect with our prospective sellers or existing sellers seamlessly. Okay, but how important is that? How important is connecting with sellers for a buyer? And what we see here is that a buyer is, stating that yes, it is easier to transact with a seller if there was a way to schedule a meeting, whether online or offline. But if there was an easy way to schedule a meeting or book appointments, that would have made the whole buying journey much more easier, right? This also takes us to the next challenge, which is the gap in knowledge, right? What essentially it implies is that it's not just enough to create connectivity or to create accessibility, but it's important to create a knowledge culture, right? You can see this statistic here, which states that 94% of the clients say that they would buy or buy more from sellers who have an opportunity of creating live interactions with knowledgeable employees. Knowledge is extremely critical. That's the key word. A buyer is not just willing to connect with anyone that will add to his woes. He would want to connect with the right person who can help the buyer in achieving the goals that he or she has set for himself or herself, right? So there is a clear gap in knowledge that buyers are observing, and we need to work on that. Now, here is an example of what, as an agency, we are working with Carl Zeiss. Carl Zeiss is one of the world's largest photography lens making company. And we are trying to create this knowledge culture in that organization by involving internal experts as well as external experts who are the influencers together. So there is a lot of collaboration that happens amongst the internal and external experts on one front. Second, this collaboration results in creating knowledge for both the sales consultants as well as the buyers and prospects. Sales consultants interact with internal experts to know more about the product, so their product knowledge, domain knowledge becomes better. But they also interact with the influencers so that their understanding about the nuances of photography uh, and about the industry, about the techniques and technologies also grows, so that when they talk to a prospective buyer, they talk his language, right? Now, these photography lenses are professional lenses. Most of them are manual lenses. They're very expensive, goes into lakhs of rupees per lens. Professional buyers invest multiple lakh of rupees in investing into procuring these lenses for specific jobs, which means that they expect to talk to very knowledgeable people when they are inquiring about lenses, or even after buying if they're inquiring about how to use or apply them better, right? Which is why we have also created a portal for both the sales guys and the consumers. The sales guys receive their product information, the industry information regularly, and they also get to participate in a quiz. And then there is a leaderboard. So all of us know that who is the sales consultant of the month in terms of the knowledge consumption. Okay. On the other hand, there is a platform for consumers who, when they are educated about the application in photography, they can experiment and they can submit their work uh, on the platform. And after submitting, they get recognition, and plus they get rewards from Zeiss. They get coupons for attending specific workshops and so on. So idea is to create a knowledge and education culture involving all stakeholders, our employees, salespeople, influencers, prospects, existing buyers. Everyone is imbibed here. Okay, so what do we need to take away from here? What is the food for thought? The food for thought is how can we create a structure and a culture of knowledge and context driven accessibility for our B2B buyers, right? So two keywords, knowledge and context is one. And second is accessibility. How can we create our platforms which can be seamlessly accessed by people, right? And what are the tools and technologies that we can embed so that we can have uh, a nice conversation without any hiccups, without any interruptions, across devices, across platforms, across locations and time zones with our B2B buyers. So two keywords as food for thought for us. The third, very interesting and extremely critical aspect of B2B buying process and the transformation of B2B is that the buying process itself is becoming complex, right? Extremely complex. You can see that there are 6 buckets here which represent the buying process of a typical B2B buyer, right from the problem identification to supplier selection. And you can see there are two more processes which are validation and consensus creations, which run throughout the journey. So, why is it becoming complex? Right? The reason why these buying processes are becoming complex is that there are multiple stakeholders now as compared to maybe a decade back or half a decade back. Today, the number of stakeholders has increased, and these people are coming from different backgrounds and functions. Okay, so that is number one. Number two is that a lot of these buckets that you saw, right from pain point identification to supplier selection, can be managed by multiple people at the same given point in time. So there are overlaps and there are parallel tasks which are going on, which also makes the consensus creation and validation a very important aspect of the entire process. The buyers have to create consensus step by step. Okay, otherwise it will not go anywhere. It's a never-ending game. So consensus building is very tough. And number two is validation, whether what we are thinking and observing and agreeing upon, is it correct or not? Okay. So both these processes plus multiple stakeholders plus the fact that multiple people are parallelly working on multiple sub processes, all these things make the buying process very, very complex, and which is why buyers today appreciate suppliers who can help them navigate these processes easily. Buyers are not looking at sellers pitching them the products. Before that, they want sellers to help them navigate this process first, right? Which is why there is a term called buyer enablement, which Gartner has coined. It's a very nice, incredible term that they have coined, very apt, very pertinent. And let's understand about buyer enablement also. We have understood that the buying process is becoming complex. On the other hand, all of you may agree also that it's becoming tougher for salespeople to get meetings with the buyers. Buyers do not want to meet salespeople, right? And 85% buyers feel that there is no value in meeting salespeople. Buyers also do a lot of research online themselves. In fact, according to a research, more than half the journey of the buyer in the buying process is done by researching himself or herself without meeting any salesperson. Now that's a deep point to understand, uh, right? We have addressed part of it, in the first 2 points, that there is a knowledge gap. So our salespeople need to be knowledgeable, and second, that uh, we should have our accessibility completely figured out. Our content platforms, our websites, our social platforms should all be structured towards helping our buyers seamlessly, right? So buyers essentially do not want to connect with salespeople, but they want to connect with salespeople if they can add value, and hence they want to connect with a knowledgeable salesperson. At the same time, buyers are also inundated with a lot of sales pitches. Now understand this: if you were a buyer, you are doing a lot of research, watching videos, webinars, downloading white papers, right, reading content, participating in virtual conferences. And on top of it, each and every seller starts sending you their brochures and their product details. What would happen? Right? It's going to create a lot of clutter, and it's going to commoditize every seller. Buyers would not want to meet you or even read your content. The more content you send, the more you are creating a problem or a challenge for a buyer, right? So that's, I hope you can see the entire complexity that is getting built up here, right? And we need to, as marketers, we need to understand this with empathy and help our buyers navigate their buying process. Right? The buyers want to know, what can I do at this stage, and how do I do it? As sellers, how can we help them? Okay. So buyer, one of the major problems that we have seen across our client base is that often the clients are not completely aware about what is the pain point. Okay, they are aware about some symptoms of the problem, but they're not really aware about the key pain points. Okay, so at that stage, it is our duty as sellers to help them understand what is their pain point, right? We need to handhold them step by step and let them do or make their journey more efficient. Correct? How do I do that? How as a seller can I do that? So number one, of course, I need to have a knowledge culture through which I need to understand the buyer and all that we have spoken about. But we can use digital technologies to create opportunities for buyers, to use those opportunities and make their buying journey much more fruitful and efficient. For example, can we not create uh, calculators, digital tools which are calculators, which can help people understand, okay, what if I deploy this solution, what will happen to my profitability, what will happen to my efficiency and productivity? Can we create those kind of tools? Can we create simulations? Can we create webinars? Can we interact with industry experts, data analytics expert, and help in creating a pain point identification check chart for a specific industry? We can do multiple things with the help of digital technologies today, right? What we should not do is start mailing or sending our brochures, or sales pitch to everyone in an organization throughout the process. That's not going to help at all. Those kind of sales-driven maneuvers are over and out. Okay, so we need to think, what is the takeaway for us as B2B marketers? Do we understand what are the key complexities for our buyers when they're buying our solutions or solutions from our category? How can I enable my buyer to make a smart decision, right? You may find that sometimes a buyer has bought your competition product, okay? But instead of sending him your product brochures and telling him that, okay, look, my product is better, how can you help him understanding what his current state and what the solution that he has brought is going to do, right? And what else can be done by him to create a better level of productivity or efficiency? You just need to give a cue to him. Rest, after that, he is automatically intelligent enough to understand, how to take it forward with you from there on, right? It's important to understand what kind of salespeople do we have. Okay, do we have talking brochures, which means salespeople who just talk about product, Or do we have people who are curators of knowledge, right? Who curate knowledge from across the industry and talk intelligently with their buyers? Do we have our digital channels opened up completely to help buyers access the key content and relevant information? So these are the questions that we need to answer. And in the end, uh, imagine that if you were a B2B buyer, what type of a B2B brand would you like to connect with? Think about it for a moment. If you were a B2B buyer, what type of a B2B brand would you like to connect with? A brand that has invested in assisting and helping you navigate through the buying journey with the help of tools, technologies, white papers, webinars, etc. Or a brand who just simply comes up with an ad about a product, you click on that ad, you reach a landing page with a lead form, and you are expected to fill that lead form, right? 60 to 70% brands fill up a lead form for sure, but they fill up a lead form of a brand which has helped them or assisted them throughout the journey, right? So don't expect, a food for thought for all of us who are investing into lead generation. Do not expect B2B lead generation to be successful in isolation. Okay. So let me give you another example here of kind of a case study which we executed for one of our clients. This client is into again smart office and meeting room automation systems, etc. They wanted to reach out to their buyers, but they do not want to pitch them uh, their products right in the beginning. They wanted to understand stage by stage, handhold the buyers, and then pitch something to them, which is contextually correct. So we devised something called, so we have a product called Kaboom. Kaboom is an account-based marketing platform, which we used with some of our global clients. So you can see here that we're the first stage of this entire execution was to understand who are our buyers, okay, and then bucket them into various slots in the form of organization size, the verticals, the functions, and the stage at which they are in. So all this information was collected by us through telephonically, through online research, and some data that the client already had. We collected all that data and divided our audience segments into three parts: the CXOs, which are the CEOs, CFOs, CMOs, and the function heads; the CTO and CIO, and the procurement and admin heads, right? Now, all of them started receiving personalized content, which means the content that a CXO is looking at is different from the content that a CTO is looking at. And when I say content, not just the content on the website, which means there was a specific platform that we created in which there were different types of content for each of these segments. But not just that, but the emails that each one of them received were different. The ads that they saw on Facebook or LinkedIn or Google, that were different. And they keep on changing automatically depending on which stage this audience set is in. If the audience moved from awareness to consideration stage, all the content across platforms would automatically change in context to what they need to consume at that point in time, right? So we would essentially track their buying stage, what kind of content are they consuming, how much content are they consuming, how much time are they spending, what is the total set of activities that they have on the platform across, and based on that, we would give them a predictive scoring, okay? And based on the stages, automatically, as I said, the content would change and get triggered also. So if a person is on action stage, then he would be sent an invitation to talk to a salesperson or a brochure of a product. But if that same person was on consideration stage or a case study, reading some kind of a case study, then we would send them white papers around those industry, right? All this is automated. There is no human intervention, which is why it's very, very proactive. In the end, the salespeople receive data about those users in the entire ecosystem who have either reached the action stage or those who have scored the highest, right? Both of them, both these segments merit to be spoken about or spoken to rather by salespeople, right? The salespeople does not need to, talk to all 10, 20,000 people in the system. They need to only talk to, let's say, about 100 people or 70 people who, are merited for being talked to. So makes a lot of sense. This is what, from a B2B perspective, case study for all of you. And these are the results of the case studies. You can see that, we targeted over 2,000, decision makers, and in the end about 72 people came on the action stage and 120 people were at the pre-action stage, which was very, very high intent. And it was very granularly tracked in terms of what percentage of our key decision makers were tracked and what was the pipeline that was created through it, right? So while the outcome was pipeline, but you see there was a lot of nurture and engagement and journey tracking and buyer enablement that happened before that, right? So that is how, large companies and successful companies rather treat the B2B marketing today as. Let's go to our uh, point on touch point to journey focus. Another very interesting point of how today buyers and sellers both uh, need to and are also moving from touch point to journey. Right? All of us know the importance of journey. Uh, we have discussed that in our last seminar also. And today also, I think time and again, we are talking about why a journey is important, because uh, it's only through a journey that a seller understands what is the context of conversation. Okay, otherwise, without journey understanding, you would talk anything to anyone, which will not make sense, which is like a spray and pray approach. Okay, so journey is important, but a journey is made up of multiple touch points or interaction points, right? And normally, marketers look at these touch points, the efficiencies in these touch points, to understand whether our journey is great or not, whether the customer satisfaction is great or not. Okay. So if you see on the screen, you can see there are 4 touch points here. There is an agent, there is a call center experience, there is a web experience, there is a support experience. All these are touch points with whom the consumers or B2B buyers interact with. Now, individually, if you see, all touch points are great. Each touch point is scoring over 85% in terms of customer satisfaction. But collectively, if you take all these touch points into account, that satisfaction rate is not 85 or 87%, that drops down to 58 or 60%, right? The reason is that we are not looking at 2 things: the gaps between the touch points. We're not looking at that. And number 2, we are not being intuitive enough to understand why a certain person had to use a certain touch point. If a person is using support again and again, he's giving a score of 90% to support each time he interacts. But we need to understand why in the first place he is interacting with support. Okay. Uh, there is some gap somewhere because of which he has to interact with the support teams again and again, frequently, right? So we need to look at, number 1, the gaps between the touch points, and number 2, we have to get data and in an intuitive way understand where there is a scope of improving the experience in the journey, which is otherwise not visible to us. But if we ask questions, we will understand where is the need for us to improve. Okay. I'll give you a small example, easy example, so that you understand this better. Think that you were going for a holiday vacation to Dubai, and you are booking your tickets and hotel bookings here on an online platform. So you go to that online platform, you fill up a form, you get a call from someone, you talk to him. After that, you get an email, you get all the itinerary and payment links, you pay, and then you receive a final confirmation, air tickets and hotel booking, itinerary, etc. Right? Each touch point is great, but the consumer is also seeing something which marketers are not seeing. Okay, the consumer talked to an online platform, but he got two mails, one from a holiday partner of that online platform, which is a second party. So let's say if you booked from Make My Trip, one email you get from Make My Trip, thank you, this is your air ticket. One email you get from a third party, which is not Make My Trip, which is a holiday partner of Make My Trip, for instance. And one email you get from the airline, the third email, right? The airline also has an e-ticket, Make My Trip also has an e-ticket. It's possible that one of them does not have your PNR number, but it has some other thing like a booking reference number. So there is a confusion there. There is a confusion that Make My Trip has sent me some part, and some part of the mail or the communication is from a third party, which is a part of Make My Trip, but still a separate entity. Okay. Anyway, so these are gaps in the touch points, which the consumer is sensing, but individually he's saying, great, my payment was done in 1 second, whatever, 5 seconds. I had a great talk with this travel agent guy. I got my tickets in my inbox. Touch point by touch point, great experience. But within the touch points, there are confusions for the person, right? When the same person reaches Dubai, okay, there is a bus at his hotel the next day to take him for a city tour. Okay. Now here also, touch point by touch point experience is great. The bus comes on time, the bus leaves on time, right? The key touch point metrics that you are seeing, can you see on your screen the touch point metrics, the coverage of the city tour, which means have they shown me all the major parts of the city? Yes, check. Great experience. Is the service timely? Yes, check. Is the driver and the staff courteous? Yes, check. Is the bus clean? Check. Is it comfortable? Check. Great. All touch point experience is great, but what happens in between? The bus drops you, you go to Burj Khalifa, the bus drops you 1 kilometer away, and from there you had to walk, right? That's in the middle of two touch points. When the bus drops you at that destination and again picks you up, there is a problem, right? Even in fact, while picking up, the location might have changed, right? The bus dropped you at a certain place, but when you came back, you found that the bus was not there. The bus has shifted 100 meters away, right? You had to take invest time into searching for the bus. The bus again drops you off at the hotel, but does not give you the next day's itinerary. You will wait next day for a call to come and then board the bus, come down the stairs of the hotel and board the bus. Right? So there are various gaps in this entire touch point of the journey. Right? And in reality, the bus driver may change every day. The bus may change every day. That's also adding to your confusion and the journey experience. If the bus was the same, if the driver was the same throughout, right? If you could have done a lot of things, right? What could you have done here? Could you have an app which could tell you or alert you or show you the position of where the bus is located, right? An app which can tell you exactly what the itinerary for tomorrow is, right? Hundreds of things can be done by marketing people by using digital technologies to enhance the journey experience. Don't look at touch point experience, but look at the journey experience, right? The same journey gap can happen in the retail sector also, in manufacturing sector also, in technology as well, in hospitality, right? Or in health sector, whichever sector you belong to, you need to create a journey of your buyer, put touch points, and then see where are the gaps between touch points where the consumer satisfaction can be a concern, right? So which is why even if touch points are great, the journey experience will be worse off or can be worse off. And we need to focus as marketers on the journey, not just the touch points. Okay. Here is an example of how IBM does it, how SAP does it. Uh, this is an example of post buying, what happens. Okay. So IBM has an advisory board of sorts where it regularly meets with senior executives of its or experts of its clients, uh, and where they share industry trends, the priorities, they get business insights, the challenges, the mid to long term visions, etc. And together, it's a win-win situation for both sides, isn't it? For a client, the client is assured that IBM is on its side. IBM is acting like a partner, and it's helping them in their growth journey and the buying journey. For IBM, it's a great way to captivate a buyer, right? The way IBM has its tab on the pulse of the buyer, uh, it would already know what solutions it should pitch and how it can help the buyer with varied kind of services, etc., to help them achieve their own growth objectives. So for IBM also, the captivity of client is ensured. For clients, the partnership of the seller is ensured. So win-win situation for both. Ditto for SAP. SAP has a huge community of industry experts, completely online, where they discuss about technologies, trends, and new solutions that can help their clients. Okay. I think the third and the last part is about the consumerization of B2B. As we were discussing in the initial part of this webinar, that B2B is more serious in one sense. B2C is more emotional based, but we need to take some best practices from B2C marketing and put them into B2B. The time has come for that. The time has come because more and more millennials are joining the buying ranks in organizations. They are becoming decision makers now, right? Millennials are more technology friendly and they have grown up using Amazons and Apples and Googles of the world. So their expectation of a user experience, even when they go to a B2B website or even when they interact with a B2B marketing organization, their expectation is that it should be as easy and simple as a consumer brand, right? So there are again many surveys, including this demand gen survey, that says that B2B buyer sees website as the first contact and first content access channel. And it was very important that the vendor and websites offer easy access to content. So when we say easy, it means that the user experience should be nice, easy, and seamless. Okay. Now, all of you have used Amazon, all of you have used Make My Trip, and if you go to their business versions, which means on your right hand side, you see a dashboard of MyBiz, which is a Make My Trip platform for business users. Now, but this is as simple, as user friendly as Make My Trip's consumer site, right? A lot of data representation and very quick and easy approvals on travel and booking of travel, booking of hotels is there, right? Similarly, on your left, you can see Uber for Business or Uber Central, which is for the businesses who are managing transportation for their employees, right? Again, very simple as their B2C products, okay? Uh, in fact, the world's largest used B2B platforms are consumer platforms or platforms which are also consumer platforms. Amazon and Alibaba both are two of the largest used B2B commerce platforms in the world. Why? Of course, one of the reasons is that their CX, consumer experience, or UX, user experience, is as solid as they offer on their consumer side of the businesses, right? So that's very important, that the user also has to be kept in mind, not just the buyer. A buyer may buy your product, but the user is the one who's going to use it day in, day out. And so, how easy to use is your platform or product is one attribute to market smartly. And why only the platform? The communication also should be user friendly and should have some elements of consumeristic marketing uh, embedded into B2B market. So this is a case study again of Logitech, where we, apart from other forms of B2B communication, we also wanted to target the IT managers. Now these are the guys who are actually on the front uh, when it comes to video conferencing. They are the guys who take the brunt when VC does not work or there is a connectivity issue. So they run for troubleshooting, right? But no one targets them. People either target the buyers or they target the marketers or the function heads who use the video conferencing equipments. We wanted to target these people who are actually tweaking and tuning and troubleshooting this product. And they might have a say in which brand is being bought by the organization. So we created a consumer oriented, with a very consumeristic feel, a program which was called the 25th Hour Diaries. What we were trying to say was that, look, if you use Logitech's video conferencing solution, then you're going to save a lot of time, right? You don't have to invest your time in troubleshooting and taking the pains of, burning your night light for preparing a video conferencing session the next day. So you save a lot of time. What would you do if you had 1 hour extra in a day? So that's why the concept of 25th Hour Diaries. You can see the whole feel and look was consumeristic, but targeting at B2B users, right? There was a contest where people had to talk about what they would do. There were prizes, there were sharing and virality elements also included into this. So that's how, even in B2B marketing, we use a lot of user driven and consumeristic approaches to attract and engage our audience set. Now, look at another element of B2B buying. How do you make B2B buying easier? Is by using gamification. So this is a simulation, a digital simulation, which IBM created for their clients and for themselves also within their organization. Let's have a look at how this is used and what is this simulation all about.
Innovative BPM simulator, where you're a consultant being dropped into a call center environment. You're being told by your CEO that you've got overnight to figure out what's wrong with your current business process model. You've got to go interview people, find clues, find out what is a business process model and how you can make this business process model come to life and be optimized for your business. You run through a series of puzzles where you're being taught what is the anatomy of the business process model, and then in the final stage, you're actually simulating against the market. In 2009, we decided to do an experiment of sorts and open up the game to customers and business partners for the first time. We created 3 mini games online and included call center optimization, supply chain optimization, as well as traffic optimization using business process modeling and management. And in essence, what you do in the game is you're tweaking the business rules to try and meet your goals as a company. The beauty is you're also leveraging the platform to visualize the impact. How is it that my business rule changing affected change within these businesses?
Right. So gamification is essentially achieving a certain positive outcome by leveraging collaboration and competitiveness and rewards in the entire process. So a great way for IBM to make buyers understand their current situation and how they can tweak certain things to achieve their desired outcomes. So look at how IBM is helping its clients understand their current situation, identify pain points, and appreciate what kind of solutions would they need, right? So a great way to break the ice, win the trust of the buying organization, And the buying organization would certainly come back to IBM stating that, great, you have explained and told us how to approach this. Now, what are your solutions around this, right? So that's how gamification. Another element, before we almost reach the end of the presentation today, but another important element is the B2B e-commerce. We talked about channel partners as a critical component of our audience sets. What do we do with them, right? So one of the ways in which now we are building this for one of our clients today is creating a B2B e-commerce network for them. Okay. We are enabling each channel entity with their own e-commerce website across the location, across the country. Okay. And all these e-commerce sites are connected at the back end with one single dashboard where we see how much is being sold at which location, by which reseller, which product is being sold, what is the profitability, and how soon the product gets delivered. Everything is noticed at the central end, at our end, at the dashboard. We also drive traffic. We advertise, we drive traffic, but we don't drive traffic to one single location. We drive traffic to resellers' platforms. Right? So location by location, the traffic goes to specific resellers, or segment by segment, certain business segments are drawn to a specific channel partner. Okay. So we are enabling the channel members with their own commerce platform. We are helping them sell more by driving traffic to them. Okay. And when the consumers, the B2B consumers come to those platforms, those channel platforms, e-commerce platforms, then we have also installed a central online demonstration, right? A buyer from anywhere in India can come to any reseller's e-commerce site, schedule a time and date for demonstration, and that demonstration is handled by us centrally for everyone. Okay. So there is a live demo demonstrated online. Third, when the buyer buys the product, the payment goes individually to each channel partner because they have their own payment gateways installed, but the shipping is taken care by us centrally. Okay. So it's a win-win situation for our channel partners and their buyers. We are helping our channel partners grow more, right? So there is a training program included in this. There is a selling program included in this. The shipments are included in this. The demonstration so that the buyers get influenced, that is included in this entire program. And this is how, this is one step towards acknowledging and growing our channel partners. This is not for us, but for one of our clients that we're doing this as of today. Okay. Now the last part about the B2B marketing transformation is about data and technology. Okay. And though I have written GE digital twins, but the digital twins concept is also being imbibed by many organizations like Siemens, by Philips, etc. Right? So this is a great technology that these organizations use by understanding in real time what's happening to their installations in the factories. So if GE has installed a turbine somewhere, GE can be sitting in US and the turbine could be in India, and they are getting real time information about what is the temperature around it, what is the humidity level around it, how much stress is building up on the machine, how many hours before we need to do some kind of a maintenance, what can go wrong in future, all these things in real time. And this concept is called the digital twin concept. So let's look closely at what this is about.
Digital twins, the innovation backbone of the future, delivering virtual representations of real-world products, systems, and cities. For example, the digital twin of an electric motor not only showcases form, but also analyzes functions, from the rotation of the shaft to thermal conductivity to data from sensors and beyond. What's more, the digital twin continuously evolves, thanks to the flow of data, user experience feedback, and new input, and it's greatly impacting development, production, and operation.
Great. So this was about the digital twins part. I'm sure you enjoyed this session today. This session was, I I believe, a bit longer than the last time, but this was also a bit complex, a bit more serious, and this had a lot of components to it, a lot of best practices to it, which I'm sure you now appreciate. I'm available for any, questions that you might have. We might not take all the questions, rather might not be able to take all the questions today, but we can address your questions through our blogs and through the emails as well. So thank you very much once again, and look forward to seeing you again.